We're live, so we'll call the meeting to order. The approval of the agenda and order of business, and all I have is that on 8.1, there's one additional name to be added to that petition. Okay.
I do. I have 3 items.
Three?
Actually, yeah. Glengarry Road.
Yeah.
New Ross Trail Society. And third would be New Ross Regional Development Society. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Lloyd?
Uniform time. I can say this.
Okay. Anyone else? Gary?
I just have a question on streetlights,
Okay.
and it's more of an inquiry than a problem.
Okay. Anyone else? Somebody want to move the approval as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, so public input. We do have one person, right, but they're not due till 9 o'clock. Yeah. So we'll move on to, so there's no other public input that I'm aware of. Okay. Okay, minutes of the previous meeting, canceled September the 29th. Fairly lengthy. Yeah. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion to approve, seconder? Second. Discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. You couldn't find it, I know they're accurate.
But if I can ask a question, I know the minutes are fine, but a couple of things in the minutes that sort of need follow-up. How do we, arising from the minutes, do we have that as an issue that we talked about? There's a couple of things in there, particularly the generator I want an update on. I don't want that to be buried, it's in the minutes. So how do we follow up on those things?
We don't usually have that as an agenda item, which is kind of odd.
That's what I thought, so that's why I raised it.
So to deal with it right now.
Well, there's, in the minutes, we talked about the comfort station and the lack of the generator. That was going to be followed up on with the church and make sure that look into this new government program for generators and things.
Yeah.
I just want to know what the follow-up on that is.
Oh, I don't know.
Don't wanna wait.
Yet.
Till next door.
We followed up last week. The program details hadn't been announced last week, so we'll continue to monitor and follow up when they're announced, and we'll make sure that they're aware of the program. They're aware of the program, there's no
The
details.
details haven't been provided yet.
Now, they announced the program and
They-
they did give some of the details in the announcement. We talked about acquiring generators.
Right, there's just no application process or anything yet, so.
I don't want that to get lost.
Okay.
And the second item in the minute that I want to follow up on was the street lighting issue, and I'll raise that at the agenda item.
Yeah.
Because it was sort of kicked back in my court at that meeting, if you may recall.
Yes.
So I just want to follow up on
Okay. Anything
Mr.
else?
Comment, is that typically what happens, that when there's follow-up, it's staff would do the follow-up if we bring up an issue?
Well, if
Well,
you have harassed you-
I'll let Tara pitch in if I miss anything. So what we would look at the minutes, the afternoon of the council meeting. Not the minutes, discuss what was added. Items that require action are added to
Yes.
our, what we call it ClickUp. ClickUp is just the name of the software. It's a long list of all the items that have been added primarily in council meetings. So it is on and likely assigned as well. So we haven't brought those all. Yeah, that's the process we follow. So it's discussed on a Thursday afternoon, added to our task list and assigned to a team member to follow up, and then it will be brought back forward to council when it's, if a council decision is required. If a council decision is not required, you'd probably see an update in a quarterly meeting.
Then is that list available? Is that something that comes back to us at times, or? I know we get the priority thing back,
Yeah,
the update, we get that other list, the click list.
We were providing it. It hasn't been, updated by some of the items haven't been updated. So we'll get back into the routine of providing an update on those routine things. We're just working on updating it from the summer and that we'll provide those, but we had been providing them previously.
and by updating, what Sarah means is that status of the action
Status
taken.
of the actions, yeah.
So we have to send that out to the team members, have them identify what action has been taken, if there's any delays or causes for delay, so.
And all that's great, and I appreciate that. But we have to answer some of these questions, and it's nice to know at least that it's on the agenda somewhere.
Yeah.
And then we can push it forward if we feel it's just taking too long. I understand the process there.
But it's very unlikely in most cases that from one council meeting to the next, it'll be resolved.
I understand.
Just as only a week.
You know, but usually most meetings that I've attended, there's arising from the minutes.
Yeah, matters arising, yeah. I don't, traditionally, we just have it, it somehow comes up anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's why I raised it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I wonder if we shouldn't wait for the building codes to have the presentation from the, yeah, yeah,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's not on till 9 o'clock, so
9:15.
9:15. Okay, so we'll go to order. We can't do that one. We can do 7.2, fire services. Oh, but Bruce is,
Can we go get them?
yeah, a lot of the agenda items are all related to that one of his property.
Generated some interest, didn't
Apparently. Well, he lives in my district, his property is in his district, so it's sort of 601.
First is on his way.
Okay. Okay,
Morning, everyone.
morning.
Good morning.
Bring everyone up to date on the fire services review. This morning. Before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to council for funding this project. For the last year, it's been taking a little while, but we're at the end of it right now.
Getting there.
And also wanted to say thank you to the fire departments and the commissions who all participated throughout the whole process. So,
Well, appreciate that.
yes. So I wanted to just refer to the request for decision first and then go into a brief presentation
Yeah.
on that. So just the current situation, we received the final report from the consultants in March of 2022. And at a meeting of April 7th, this ad hoc steering committee reviewed that. They were actually invited today and received a copy of our presentation for that. So they reviewed the final fire services review and determined that it met the scope of the RFP that was issued back in 2019. Following the April 7th meeting, the steering committee met with their individual commissions and the fire departments and further reviewed a total of 38 recommendations that had come from the consultant's report. We met again, the steering committee, on September the 7th to discuss the recommendations contained within the report. And we have grouped them into several categories related to possible improvements in fire service gradings, capacity, response times, and general services to the public. The steering committee then agreed on several priorities that they felt that we should be moving forward with. And that's outlined in the report and in the presentation. So I just wanted to move to the actual presentation now. and then come back to the report.
Okay.
So just to quickly review the purpose of the fire services review. The last review that we had done of the fire services was back in 2008. And considerable progress had been made on the recommendations made at that time. The 2008 report was more qualitative in nature than quantitative in nature. And we needed to update our databases with fire flow requirements, insurance gradings, and community risks and benchmarking of the fire services capacity. We also took the opportunity of upgrading the water supply and the insurance grading related to that. So, but overall, we were looking at identifying the current fire protection and emergency services needs of each community, looking at the fire risk and the other services that the fire departments provide to the communities. Review the current fire protection and emergency services response capacity. And that is how are we prepared right now to meet those risks throughout the municipality. We wanted to outline possible service delivery models for the future to mitigate current and community risks and explore service and improvement potential cost savings for fire services and the public sector through improved insurance gradings. And then finally, to provide data for council and fire services in optimizing models for the future decisions and on standards. So we're trying to address changes in community risk profiles and also potential longer-term service requirements through the optimization models. Basically, where we stand today and where we have any potential to improve our services. So the overview of the actual fire services report, there were 3 phases. One was the risk identification in phase 1. And in that phase, we did calculations on fire risk for over 7,600 buildings with the all fire districts. Each fire district was analyzed separately. The results of that were showing that primarily it was residential, and the majority of the risks were classified as low in the sense of 1,000 to 2,000 fire flow capacity in gallons per minute. I don't want to get too technical there, but basically the risks were within that range. There were much higher risks in the Chester, Western Shore, and Upwards area due to commercial, industrial, and institutional facilities in those districts. And the highest risk identified was in Chester itself, which had a fire flow over 3,000 gallons per minute, and also a risk of conflagration in the dense built-up areas of the village. And we're all familiar with what that last in the Playhouse fire, we have that risk. We also looked at another standard, which is based on population density in the sense of response, and that is NFPA 1720. We did some mapping of the districts, but it was showing that it would be very difficult for a volunteer fire force to meet those standards, and so we switched our focus to a more of a response capacity versus a model which is based on population density. So varied. Yeah. So the other risks identified, of course, the biggest one being major wildfire and the urban interface risk. In the municipality, we're rated at an 8 with a possible 10 with respect to fire risk, wildfire. Other ones we looked at, of course, are the standard service models, motor vehicle collisions, water, fire, and ice rescue, landfill, wind farm locations. So we did a full risk analysis of those and identified not only the fire risks, but the risks other that we're facing. In phase 2, that was really related to a capacity assessment, and that is where we actually met with all the fire departments on a number of occasions. We toured their facilities, toured their districts, met with the chief officers and the commissions, and gathered data related to capacity and service requirements. We did over 19 assessments for 19 areas, ranging from evaluated equipment and apparatus, fire ground operations, qualifications, training, safety. And we benchmarked that, and just for the benefit of the volunteers, as a volunteer, they're well-trained and well-equipped, but they're being benchmarked against a more urban, metropolitan career fire department. So, but we use that as a benchmark, and we actually achieved some pretty good scores in that respect. So I just wanted to point that out. If you look at the actual report, there are some low numbers there, but that's really the only indication, because as a volunteer force, you can only receive 50% of the rating itself. So
Just because you're a volunteer.
well, that's right, because of the availability of the volunteers.
Can't
and
guarantee
You
that.
can't, yeah. So,
Do we actually have a report?
yes, I had sent out a link, number of, in March.
Okay.
We can
and,
resend it.
But we do have I have a hard copy for each member of council also.
Is that the 250-page one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You want that again?
Electronically.
I do have
I
printed
think
copies for each member, and also we can send out the link again.
If you have them already printed, I'd take them.
Yeah,
I can make some notes on it. That's easy.
yeah, I have that available for you.
Yeah, I haven't finished reading the full 250 pages.
I don't know what they want to do.
So phase two, as I say, looked at our capacity to meet the primary risks, and then identified some opportunities for improvement. And also we took the opportunity of registering the recognized water supplies, and that immediately did an upgrade to our insurance ratings. Phase three was really optimization modeling, just some basis for decisions for the future. Most of them being long-term as we move forward with station replacements and things that data on there to look at the coverage and some different models for consideration. So that's really taking into account some commercial and industrial growth in Blandford, Hubbards, and Kaiser Meadow areas. How do we address those in the future? So there's some modeling there that is open for consideration. Just go through the consultant summary. The biggest and the byline here is the fire services within MOC to demonstrate the capacity to meet established insurance classifications within the criteria that they're forced to live with, in the sense of the distances from the stations, but they're managing to maintain at a maximum level the insurance classifications. And further quote from the report itself is the fire services demonstrated confidence in managing all of the FUS requirements. So I think that's kudos to them. So the just to give an idea, because we don't have any municipal water supply, it limits their ability to meet some of the insurance classification. They are managing to meet 3B, which is without municipal water supply or hydrant protection, the maximum that you can actually achieve within those areas. So I think that's within the 8-kilometer distance of the fire station. 3B is without hydrants is the maximum.
It just goes to kids.
Yeah. So that being said, we in certain areas where we do have hydrant protection, and that leads into our hydrant protection program, we've been able to increase that to 3A, which is one step up on that. And also recently We did achieve the 3S or the water shuttle accreditation. And throughout that study, we've been updating that to make that easier to achieve. So we've actually maximized that also going forward. When it comes to commercial classifications, we're really maintaining our basic levels. That's on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being a fully equipped urban metropolitan, full pressurized hydrants, everything. And that would be a grading of 1. We're maintaining a grading of 7 within the distances. And so that's really without municipal water supply or pressurized hydrants. That has been the best we can do right now. So there are some opportunities to improve that in the commercial areas as we move forward with our hydrant protections. We did take the opportunity, and that did prove beneficial to the insurance ratings, but we updated through our Mill Cove hydrant program. We registered those again and actually took the opportunity to update the national database. So there are some changes positively in the protection area there. The other area really here is from the consultant summary is that the MOC would benefit operationally and administratively from adopting a consolidated services model using the 7 existing fire stations. And just comment on consolidated, that word really applies not to shutting down any stations or looking at in that area. It really is trying to get the 7 existing departments to work collaboratively together on common protocols and try and get that all those resources working in one direction. We only have approximately 200 volunteers, so they're spread pretty thin across the. So we work together and closely together. That's the other half of that is if we do move that way, we do save an awful lot on administrative costs in the sense of administrative load on our fire chiefs and our fire officers. If we use common protocols, we don't have to do 7
different
same thing 7 different times. So, the other aspect of that, in the sense of looking at response times, standardizing training procedures, and purchasing opportunities. The future planning of the fire station locations, that's in the optimization phase, but it was focused not only, as I mentioned, on NFPA 1720, which is population based, but this on fire risk and fire flow. That was focusing on centralizing the station in Chester and optimizing the other fire station locations to provide maximum coverage within 8 kilometers, which is the measurement that they use in the classification of the hall itself. So the consultants overall, this is a very high level overview, but the consultant summary was fire services should consider development of its water supply to meet the NFPA 1142 requirements. 1142 is the alternate or the standard on alternate water supplies, being the dry hydrant installations. And that is as an opposite or an alternative to full municipal water, pressurized water supply. There's a focus on improvement in response times through the use of a single dispatch system. Right now, we're using 2 dispatch agencies. That is causing some delays in response times because we have to, the call comes into one dispatch and has to be transferred to another dispatch area. So there is a good opportunity to to go to a single dispatch and implementing a computer aided dispatch protocol. That's where we automatically and simultaneously dispatch the equipment to the risk or to the fire scene without the involvement necessarily at that point of having the fire chief call for extra resources. This is all done automatically. Also improvements in response times through the automatic aid as I discussed, and multiple station response protocols, especially during the workday hours with our limited ability to provide daytime coverage because everyone is essentially working. Our volunteers are out of the area. We're looking at, or they're recommending that we examine multiple station response, simultaneous response again to those major scenes. We don't want them going out on medical calls and everything, but on major incidences.
Yeah.
And that would be up to the fire services to determine
What works best, yeah.
what protocol and what works best there. And also improvements in some key areas in the evaluation of the capacity, primarily pre-planning, training, recruitment and retention, and records management. On the municipal side, they wanted to point out that we can assist the fire services in several areas through policy and bylaws and support wildfire mitigation. So work on subdivisions and private roads, design and maintenance in many areas of our municipality. There's unpaved roads and there's private roads that are unmaintained and overgrown. And
Hard for the trucks to get up there.
you just cannot get trucks up there, and that's not only a liability issue, but also a service issue. We need to look at overall building access and through our development permits and things and what we can do to assist the fire services there. Also to increase our fire safety inspections and fire prevention programs to again provide support to the services. And then to have the council review the needs identified on other risks within that within the community and determine the resource allocations necessary. So this will come back through the advisory committee on some specific needs there. So just moving forward, as you say, we did the overview of the recommendation. There was a total of 38 recommendations made in the final report. A lot of those recommendations were grouped into several different categories. The steering committee worked on grouping those. And as you see, we worked on the equipment and apparatus, water supply, fire department response, training, volunteer workforce, recruitment and retention, and risk management, and the administrative side of it. So we're looking here at each district, of course, has its own specific individual needs, but through the work of the steering committee, there is an agreement on some short and long-term priorities that will affect or impact all of the fire services across the municipality. So this is the, as I said, the steering committee met in early September and worked out these overviews and the recommendations made in the report. So I just wanted to go through these and just describe in a little bit more detail. We talked about consolidated dispatch and the agreement and response protocols. But just before I start there, there is some color coding here. Just to explain that the ones in red are what we feel the fire service or the fire services can can take on themselves and because they're primarily operational and we're not involved in the operation day to day. This is the expertise that they have. And so that is an indication there of the ones that we think they may need some support from council, but primarily these will be operational. They can go ahead. The orangey color there are a little bit more complex issues and where we see that we'll have to be involved in supporting them and working through those. And the ones in blue are a medium term that involve both the fire services, the council and other agencies, be it, for example, wildfire. We would have to be in consultation with the province. They're primarily responsible for that. So that is the more complex issues and where we would probably need more support from the municipality. So going back on the consolidated dispatch, as I said, we're currently using 2 dispatch agencies. There's some communication delays. One agency doesn't have computerized dispatch systems, and such systems are needed to effectively implement protocols going forward. So we're looking at a model which has the nearest station is first to respond and simultaneously having the other fire departments respond as required. That's also necessary for the daytime coverage. We're looking here at having simultaneous response on major incidences from 3 stations. And also the pre-planning programs were to be developed and are focused on commercial, industrial, and institutional facilities using the guideline of NFPA 1620 for that. So those are ones that the fire services are currently working on and moving forward as quickly as possible. Related to the volunteer workforce, that is a major risk for us. As I say, we have 200 or so volunteers across the municipality. Our ability to recruit and retain, not only here, but across the nation, basically, is
not
an
unique to
issue.
us.
Exactly. But we are wanting to look at what we can do to not only have a longer term recruitment and retention plan, but what we can do to support our volunteers and also retain and but also bring in new ones. Now that's complicated and we need to work together to move forward on that. But that identified as a major risk.
Yeah.
The records management system, we're running essentially a lot of different systems right now. Technology has improved over the years. We looked at standardizing these several years ago, but technology has improved with tablets and software, web-based systems, which we can make a good records management system going forward. And looking at standardizing call reports, things like that. Again, to try and relieve the administrative load on the fire department. Equipment and apparatus, our fleet is in good shape, but we do want to make sure that we do have a long-term plan for replacement. Equipment and apparatus is becoming extremely expensive, and we want to make sure that we do have reserves and where the commissions do have reserves in place for longer-term replacement. The 20-year is the basic FUS requirement or underwriter's requirement. You can extend that to 25 years in some cases, but basically the guideline is 20 years for first out engine or first out tanker. Training is there's a number of recommendations in the report on upgrading our training program. We're suffering right now a little bit with respect to ongoing service issues with the Nova Scotia Fire School. There's been cancellation of courses. The mobile bird unit that we used to have come out here to give firefighters a lot of live training, that's been taken off the road. It's lying in that heap somewhere in the parking lot at the school. So that service is no longer available to us. So that means that our guys have to go down to Waverly to do any fire training. And that's really just not convenient for us, and it's not the best way that we want to proceed. So we're looking at a more regional approach to using our own resources. And we have an awful lot of highly trained firefighters, level 2 and above, which can put together our own training program. And what we want to do is to approach that, to standardize, so each firefighter that is trained to a certain level and has got the standardized training. Also, to more importantly, to ensure the health and safety requirements are met for our firefighters. That does represent some burdens on the volunteer himself or herself, because it takes time. And so we want to try and make it as easy as possible to do that. So that'll be the objective. I talked a little bit about the dry hydrant program. This is probably the would have the biggest impact on our insurance ratings. And we have models now that we want to upgrade our water supply to have water supply within 5 kilometers of the risk itself, and then within 8 kilometers of the fire station. On the commercial side, we do have an opportunity, if we do install hydrants within 300 meters of a commercial establishment, that we can increase our insurance ratings also. So we want to make sure that is included. The other aspect that came up was we need extra protection at our marinas and our docking facilities to have offshore or onshore firefighting capacity. So we're looking at including the marinas and that in the overall hydrant program. The other one is the wildfire mitigation program. The risk is high within the municipality, and as I say, it was measured at an 8 out of a maximum of 10. So we wanted to explore how we can increase our wildfire capacity, and that also looking at how we can provide education as from a form of mitigation through Fire Smart Canada. There's a number of communities already on board with that, and through burn bylaws, our education. And then the working with the Department of Natural Resources on apparatus, equipment, and training.
I have a question. Can I ask
Yes.
a question on that? And I can't remember, but I know that Councillor Church brought it forward around the whole the wildfire and the fact that the degree of forest lands that we have
Yes.
here. Did we write a letter? I can't remember. I can't remember that. Did we write a letter? You had brought it to the table around the DNR, what was DNR and that whole program, but now it's not happening and so on. I can't remember.
I don't remember.
I don't, but that being said, I know that the
I know the commissions had a
Written to the province,
letter,
yeah.
but I didn't, I think that was through the MLA.
correct, that's
I
what I was
don't
gonna
know.
mention as well.
I don't know
Yeah,
what came of that.
That's what I was wondering too, because I haven't attended a meeting of the the group, the Lunenburg County group, or not Lunenburg County, Municipality of Chester. Group, Lunenburg East or whatever it's called, recently, but I know that they have written
Yeah,
correspondence.
well, we'll be taking that forward as
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah,
because-
but 8 or 10 is
Maybe.
pretty serious, and it's too late once it's too late, so. yeah.
Exactly, and the fact that the urban interface is becoming larger all the
Oh,
time.
yeah. Thank you for letting me
Yeah,
know.
it's lots of woods around.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I guess the assumption is that the fire departments are the first responders. It's not natural resources, which you would assume to be the case.
Right, yeah,
And,
and they put a huge effort in, and
Yeah.
but it is overall responsibility from the province. But
It is, that's just it.
Yeah, so,
So you need to work with them.
yeah, exactly. And that's why it's in blue, because it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
But there, we'll continue to promote the training, and we'll continue to promote the fire smart and education. As I say, there's a number of communities at the base level of Marvin's Island, for example, up in the Chester Basin area of Lakeview. They're all interested in, at a community level, to participate in the fire smart program. So good initiative from the ground up.
Mhm.
And then the last one on that list of priorities is more of a longer term, but again, it's an important issue. What we can do to support the fire services in road conditions, private road, subdivision development permit, that type of information of how we can, from a preventive point of view, assist them in that area. So that is an overview, as I say, of the steering committee, overview of the recommendations of all of the report. These are the ones that are expressed as priorities to them, and bringing that to your attention today. As for next steps, we're really looking at having council, number one, as for the request for decision of the season report, but accept the fire service priorities as presented. And we're working to reestablish the FAC. We'll be coming to council probably next council session with the draft terms of reference to get that going forward. We're looking that as the body going forward to implement in conjunction with the fire services.
Do you want to ask a question now, Andre? Wait, well, okay, wait, just keep moving.
And then work with the FAC to develop action plans and working committees. A lot of these will require working committees or ad hoc committees going forward to bring the final programs. And then, as I say, to provide ongoing support, and we want to have some sort of tracking of the implementation program, so we know where we stand going forward.
He's done.
Okay, so thank you Bruce for that comprehensive summary. You know, as a counselor, I find that fire matters are always tricky ones because it's a service that in general in the community is regarded as a good one. And there aren't really, to the lay person, there aren't really any issues with it. So it's always dangerous when we mess with something that the public perceived as not being broken.
As it is.
That's right. And that's reflected in the report. We are doing.
Now, in 2008, I think it was Profor did that report. Was it the report, the previous report? This is a far more reaching report than the original report.
Yes, it was the same agency, but as I said, it was a more qualitative report versus engineered report.
So the first question I have is, if we receive this report, does this mean that we're giving our sort of like a blessing that we agree with the recommendations of this report? And we wish from council for them to proceed, or like, what is it exactly we're
No.
doing with this report?
I'm just asking you to receive the report for consideration. That's all I'm asking today.
You said we accept their fire services priorities.
Well, that's different. That's just what the
Yes.
fire department wants to work on right now.
Yeah,
That's
but
their priorities.
there's
For
many
this year.
recommendations in the report that are questionable from the point of view of the fire services.
Yeah.
What I presented today is what they believe out of that report should be worked on.
Right now.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. The optimization, for example, in phase 3 is for longer term planning. And we're certainly not expected to accept that. going forward.
I think that was my concern, and I have a list of things that I was curious about, and I'll just speak to you openly about them here. So, like, first and foremost, like, this is sort of not our typical report that we receive because it's unbalanced in the way that it provides recommendations to improve our FUS score. But there's no discussion of what it would cost to actually implement all the recommendations. So we could maybe have a slight reduction in insurance if you're a regular person, maybe.
Yep.
But it could have a dramatic impact on your fire service rate if you were to implement these recommendations. So
Yeah, there's obviously a balance and a cost to.
normally when we receive reports like that, those two things come together so we can actually weigh the benefits.
Well, that would be the objective of the FAC moving forward, to put that in front of you from a point of view of cost and benefit. For example, there's a cost and a benefit to putting a dry hydrant. A dry hydrant would cost somewhere in the range of $10,000 to $15,000 if it's being done with proper fire truck access. And you may only have 3 or 4 residents that are actually going to benefit from that. So that would be the cost benefit that you would have to look at. And that would be in the program that we would try and evaluate that.
So the recommendations are what we're sort of, I'm not sure, accepting or getting behind here today is to implement the recommendations from the report by the steering committee. Is that, am I reading this right? Or so they.
Yeah, I'm asking
some
you.
recommendations out and we're sort of like supporting that. Is that what's happening?
Yes, I'm asking that based on the steering committee for council to accept those as priorities, but we need to come back to you obviously with the outcome.
Implementation.
The implementation.
To us.
Yeah,
Once
I mean,
they got it home.
If the dry hydrant is going to cost $200,000, then obviously we have to come back and.
These are the priority ones and these ones here, wait.
Maybe we should say, as I say, accept our fire services priorities moving forward. That's what. I agree with you.
Yes, Tara.
I'm just gonna try to provide a little clarity around it.
Yeah.
So usually when we present a report to council, we either ask you to receive the report, which usually that means we're not asking you to comment on the recommendations from the consultants or prioritize or anything like that. That is why we had the steering committee involved, because we have them make recommendations based on the consultants' recommendations. So what we're asking you to do is to receive the report. That allows us to close out the contract with the consultants and say they achieved what we asked them to do. So we then had the fire services committee go through and make prioritizations based on the consultant's recommendations. We're asking you to accept the fire services recommendations and priorities, and then refer that to a new FAC, which you'll see a report either next week or the following week with some options for the fire services committee. And so then what we anticipate is that these recommendations and priorities for the fire service would be referred to the fire advisory committee at that time
To try to
Yeah.
implement.
to try and work
That's
on
right, yeah.
implementation and
We're not actually approving anything. We're
Right.
just receiving it and
You're
they'll come back
receiving-
with us for
You're-
approval.
you're
receiving the
accepting-
report and accepting the priorities as presented by the steering.
These are the ones that we're saying, fire department, yes, we think, we agree, you should work on these.
Those are very different things.
Two different.
Yeah.
totally.
Go ahead.
Anything to do cost of money, my understanding. would
Well, they
be
have to come
to
back.
to council and we would have to prove.
Yes.
There may be some question. Is it possible that some of the priorities, and you referenced it earlier, would be developed and implemented independently by fire
Yes.
departments? And the cost of that would be absorbed in their fire rate?
Yes.
And there could be some recommendations where the new fire advisory committee thinks there's a role for the municipality to fund through the
That's
general.
right, yeah, and that's what I was getting at,
And that's
there
what
on the
they'll
more
come back and ask.
complex issues.
Yeah, okay.
I guess,
Council may need to be involved going forward. The ones that are strictly operational, the fire services can do that.
They can do it anyway.
And
I guess if it's receiving a report, I have less of a concern about. I get concerned when I look at some things that are being recommended in my layperson's non-fire brain, when I see like basically auto aid during the daytime, where oftentimes we have like non-urgent calls, and then you have 3 departments automatically sending trucks every time. That seems like
Waste of time.
not a good idea, and I feel like that would have to, before, as a layperson, I feel like that could be a problem. And that's one of the recommendations, I believe. So, that receiving the report, and closing a contract, one thing. Sort of putting my support behind recommendations. I have concerns. I would like to feel those out more fulsomely with other parties before I wanted to do that.
I think what I'm really here is, we support them working on it. It's just that before it's implemented, we want to know what it means.
right, yeah, that,
I think it's too.
and that we would want to come back.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these things, if they didn't want our help, they can go do it anyway, because they're independent groups.
That's right.
They don't need our permission. But it's just that there's implications for the municipality, either financially or resource wise. And before that part is implemented, if we approve it, we need to know what they are.
Exactly.
That's all.
And that would be the role of the fire advisory.
Yeah, to come back and tell us that before, and then we'll see if we're, I don't think anybody has any problem with them working on these issues to see what it means. It's just that once they get that far, before they implement it and we commit resources and money,
Right.
they need to tell us what it is.
Thank you. I'm not sure, maybe I didn't do enough background work coming into today's council. I reached out to my fire chief on Tuesday, which was rather late, and chatted with him, or actually left a message, and we were going back and forth a bit, but I don't have a problem necessarily with anything that's been presented or even proposed as a possible motion to receive it or accept it or to look at it or to review it or and so on, because using Landry's terms, I'm certainly not up on the fire services like I should as just a regular person, but I have utmost faith and trust in the people that do, and that's my fire department and my fire chief and the executive there. So I am behind whatever recommendations that they would bring for the discussion, 150%, because fire service, I know that we know this, but it's integral to everything that we do in my community. Business attraction, resident attraction, employees for those businesses, it all for me, fire service. So we need to do something more than what we're doing. I'm gonna support my fire chief. I'm just putting that out there.
Yeah. I am too, but I get the point where if they take a look at the dry hydrant program, for instance. And they come back and say we need 10 more of them over 5 years built.
Mhm.
And it's gonna cost the municipality money, they gotta come back to us. If we're paying for it.
So just to comment on that, if they've given the thought and the time commitment that we've finally arrived at this study after 4 or 5 years, 3 to 5 years, it's not that long. I guess when I think of my tax dollars
Yeah.
and I think of my community, my guess would be that my community is gonna be behind that, and that's where my vote is gonna
Yeah,
be.
yeah, sure, but we want to be able to vote on that expenditure.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, that's totally where my vote is.
And it may be that the commissions themselves.
Want to pay for it themselves? I don't know. I mean,
But it's there as a potential for discussion.
I think all we're looking for from us is, do you support us going forward and working on these as priorities
With the fire service.
With
for
the
fire service? That's
With
what
the fire
they're
advisory.
they want to know they're not wasting their
We're
time.
not asking for a decision on any of those because those ones have to be
It's
developed.
just, do you agree that we should work on these?
And all of the protocols for things like automatic aid, like it's not as simple as just sending everybody out, 3 departments out when a call comes in. They have protocols in place for when those
When that
automatic
would be
aid
implemented,
happens,
whenever
right?
not.
So for a car
Protocol.
accident or an MVA or something like that, there would be a certain protocol. For a fire, a house fire, there would be another protocol.
You're not gonna dispatch.
For a fire alarm, there might be a different protocol,
No.
right?
And that
They
is
need
all within the
They need to sort
expertise
that.
expertise of the
Of the
fire
fire
services.
service.
Eric?
I'd be prepared to receive the report. So, without comment on priorities at this point.
Why?
I-
They need to know they're not
Okay,
wasting their time
okay,
doing
let me
this.
finish.
Yeah.
That's what I would support. I will want to consult with Village Commission, who's a major player. I have done that. To get their position on this. And I want to have further consultation after I've heard this report today with the fire chief, the fire department. Now, you had a meeting with your fire department on Tuesday. I've had some general conversations with the fire department, and there's some concerns expressed about some of their priorities. And to say at this point that I would accept the fire services recommendations without further consultation with Village Commission and Fire Department, I won't do that. But I
Okay.
will
Receive.
agree to receive the report for the reasons I stated.
The request for decision
Is to receive. the
is to
report.
receive the report. To the motion that we're looking at is to receive the report as we
But it's also to accept the priorities. That's what it says in white piece of paper.
Yeah, why wouldn't we allow the fire services to determine priorities from the report?
I have no
That's right.
idea.
It's not good. That's what I would like, rather than us recommending these 7.
They're the ones who are
These
recommending these.
They came
to
from
us.
the fire service, so.
Yeah.
the
Which is
steering
the village
committee-
commission, which is the fire commission, which is the
all
fire
of the fire departments and all of the commissions were.
But I don't.
involved in making these recommendations.
They're not on the same page, though.
Bruce came to us a few weeks ago, and indicated that this would be coming to us end of September, the first couple weeks of October. So we knew this was coming.
Right.
And they had met, I think your report at that time was that they had met the night before, and they were fine tuning, and so this is coming. Those
Directly
recommendations
from
are
them.
coming from that group.
So we had an initial meeting in September to receive the report. We asked April. We asked the fire department, so the committee members, so we had a commissioner and usually it was the chief, but a department member represented on the steering committee. They went back and they had April, May, and June to go back to their departments and their commissions to discuss the report, come up with the top 3 or 5 priorities for their department from the recommendations. We had a meeting scheduled in the summertime. They asked us to wait until September with summer vacations and stuff. So we met with them in September, and again, all 7 departments had representation at the table or submitted written submission with their priorities. So they voted on that, we reviewed it with them, we sort of went through each department's priorities, made a list of the areas that were common to them. So they don't all agree on all the recommendations in the report, but the ones that are presented here,
They
we
did.
voted on and had majority support from the Fire Service Committee. And then the presentation was, just so you're aware, the presentation was prepared by Bruce. It was sent out to all the committee members for comment before it came to you today. So that was the process we went through, just so you
That's
know.
correct.
Did you receive comments?
I received one comment from one district, actually it was Blanford, and they agreed that it represented the content of the agreement that the second.
They just told you that it was what they said they were wanted done. Yeah. Okay, so let's at least have a motion to receive the,
But yeah, my recommendation was.
first we'll do that.
Let's do a recommendation to receive the report.
Yeah, and
It
then
is
I'll vote
recommended
on
that-
whether or not we're gonna, the next steps. First, we're receiving the consultant's report, just to get ready.
Just before you do this, you're gonna receive the report, but if this happens, we're gonna form a fire advisory committee. And if we approve the recommendations, they're all gonna go to that group.
Yep.
Which will again vote again to send what they send here as a group for a priority. They wouldn't send something that only, I would assume this new group is gonna vote on those issues, what we send back here. So anything that comes in front of us would be coming from the majority of the group.
Yes,
So
and
make
it
them a
would come,
priority. The only thing coming here is what the group recommends as
That's
a
right.
whole group. Okay.
I just wanted the easy thing here is to accept the consultant's report, and then I was gonna move on to voting on the next steps.
so I looked at it as, maybe I just go over my recommendation as it was receive the report as meeting the scope. Work with the fire services on the priority outlined by the steering committee.
Yeah.
And work with them on the priorities, that shouldn't be a problem. Somebody wanna make that motion?
And just further, as the ad hoc committee has completed its assignments and task of the evaluation of the report, providing counsel with the fire service priorities, it recommended that the ad hoc committee be discontinued and that we move forward with the fire advisory.
Which they agreed to.
I will second Floyd's motion. And I will ask for a recorded vote on whatever motions we are making here around this presentation.
Well, I'm just going now by what he just read.
The whole thing.
Well, we put the whole thing in.
Yep. Yeah.
Who's making the motion?
Just the
Bruce
first
or Floyd?
So I don't
I
know.
just made the recommendation.
Floyd,
What is your recommendation? Read it one more
it's right
time.
there, it's right there.
We haven't made a motion yet.
I just want the only thing I may not, of the whole motion, is at the end of it is to move forward in the implementation of the priority
I took
recommendation.
that one.
That's more sort of an implement them, and I'm not sure we want that in there. We want to work on them, not maybe the implementation of the priority recommendation. That may be.
Yeah, I took, after the bracket FAC, I took that part out.
Yeah.
Okay, so is that the motion you're making?
Motion. The exclusion of after FAC and brackets, leave that last line of.
And second and recorded vote, yes.
Okay, discussion of the motion. All those in favor? Opposed?
Interesting.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
Okay.
Thanks to all the departments and the commissions.
Yeah. Look forward to the new fire advisory committee.
Yeah. We'll,
Trying.
bring that council, next council session, sorry.
Sorry,
Next council session.
we're gonna, I wanna review the policy, we'll get it on,
I don't know.
hopefully this month, that's the goal. Next week is the goal.
Something next. Jamel, sorry. Some things are complicated. Almost everything is. Yeah. So you wanted to speak to council?
It was about something that
Everybody has-
Brandon had brought up, and it was a property that's condemned in Gold River, a property that I own.
Yeah,
Okay, and Well, what?
Come on up.
Come on up. Oh,
Yeah, so we haven't dealt with that yet. We're waiting to hear from you first.
okay, no, the thing is that the property is gonna be either sold in the new year or it will be knocked down. Either way, right? It's already been condemned, he's already cordoned it off, right? And if somebody went on the property, it's a private property, nobody had the right to go onto it except for the bylaw officer. When somebody called him, I think, to take attention off of them, because the property right next to it has been condemned 2 or 3 times and passed up. And I think that somebody had put the direction on, to take attention away from them and their property being condemned. They went to mine, which they shouldn't have, went on my private property and pushed the door open and looked in at the house and said, what a mess, and Brandon went up and looked at it, and it is, and I know that, I'm not arguing that point. But the last couple of years, I haven't been in the condition financially or health-wise to do any of that, right, as some of you are aware. So anyway, I just want to put it off till probably in the spring. And the house will either be knocked down or sold,
Yeah,
the property.
yeah, I don't want to get too, I mean, because we haven't heard the report from them yet, but.
Okay,
But I mean, I looked at the pictures, obviously, and it's not safe, and I know that it's private property, but that does not mean that it isn't safe. I mean, people go on private property, they do.
right, I understand that, but I mean, somebody, whoever reported it shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Well, I don't,
Without my, they would have said something to me, we want to go look at the property, we're thinking about buying it. But somebody has already approached me a couple times about buying it. But he's gonna knock it down.
nobody's gonna fix it, that's for sure.
No, nobody's gonna fix that property up no more, no.
We just want to remove the safety hazard.
That's not a problem with me, I just need time. I'm not in the finance, like, I haven't worked for 3 years
I know.
because of my health, I don't have the finances to afford it at this point.
Yeah, Andre.
Mr. Asif, thank you for coming.
No problem.
We haven't heard the report yet.
Okay,
I've only read it. What would be the date that you would be, we would need a date.
probably early March, I would think, because after the winter, it'll January, February, he won't be able to get at it. He won't be able to look at it about buying it, like, the gentleman who wants to buy it, right? And I already have somebody lined up who will knock it down if it's not purchased at that time.
Yeah, so I think that we're gonna hear the report from the building, from the bylaw officer. And so this council will weigh that safety risk against the time. So they'll basically, there'll be an order given if we don't have a date. We need to have a date.
Well, it would be early March would be the date, okay?
Yeah, well, okay, and I don't know, we'll have this discussion both with you and with them, but I mean, is there a way to board it up to make it safe?
There's no way of getting in
Doesn't look like it.
except through the front door, which can be locked unless somebody kicks the door in and goes in. I mean, you can put a lock on the door. I mean, there's no windows to crawl through or anything like that. Everything's, the windows are still there and they're in place. They'd have to smash windows out to get in.
Yeah.
Or kick the door in to get in. I mean,
Could the doors and windows be sheathed with OSB or something like that?
Well, yeah, I can cover them up with something, get somebody to go over and cover them up. Put plywood over the doors and stuff like that, yeah. There's only really one door that's in the front of the house.
Yeah, I know, you can get right underneath it, I know.
The keeping underneath the life here, because I have looked at the pictures and it has been to our committee.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to say secure, no one goes there, but if the kids get out there playing or something, I really have a concern of what could happen to them, so. I'm not sure, and we haven't discussed it yet with some council.
Well, I can probably count the kids that live in that area on one hand.
Let me take one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess
Well, obviously, this building has been there for a long time. That's why it's in the condition it's in.
Yeah,
So I think this council needs to weigh the time, the additional time against the risk. And if you're saying the 1st of March, one way or another, it's gonna be gone, then we'll have to make that decision after we hear the report.
Okay.
One
Okay.
question on, can we refer to the report at this point? We have a report on the building.
Yeah,
Can we refer to that yet? We haven't discussed it yet, but there's some things in this report I'd like to ask.
you can ask him, yes, sure.
One thing in the report, hi, welcome. One thing in the report talked about the well. And wanted to confirm it was secured and not a danger to the public. Can you tell me the situation with the well on the property?
Well, I haven't been on the property myself in quite a while, right? So there was a cover on the well, it was a plywood on the well with a large stone that a kid wouldn't pick up because it took off for me to pick it up at the time.
So the dug well
It's a dug well, yes,
with a wooden top.
with a wooden top it hit on
When
it,
was the
yeah.
last time you saw that wooden top?
Like I said, I haven't been on the property for probably a year and a half.
So you don't know what the condition of that is.
No, I don't.
It's probably not very good.
Because it's not the unsightly part. but
It's the
concerns
danger
that
part.
It's the dangerous aspect of it.
If it was just unsightly, giving you time wouldn't mean a thing to us. No. It's the danger. And once I don't want to get too deeply involved in the legalities of it all, but once we determine something's unsafe, if we don't take action and somebody hurts themselves, then we're liable. So
Have we determined,
they have determined.
if we determine that we're going to proceed, do we know what the cost of demolition is going to be?
I don't.
Do we go in?
We need to hear the report.
Okay, I think so. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Like I said, I have somebody lined up that wall that's prepared to knock it down. If this deal doesn't go through, the gentleman buying it, right?
Yeah.
Because he's gonna knock it down if he buys it as well, anyway. He does, the building's no good for nothing.
What's going to take him till March to decide if he's going to buy it?
What's gonna take him to March,
Yeah.
until March, to see if his finances, after his taxes are done, to see what his situation is financially to buy it.
Yeah.
No further report.
Well, I mean, we need to hear the report. I mean, can we give you X number of months to do it? I don't know yet, because it depends on, like I said, I mean, once we determine it's unsafe, we're
No, I had one before, probably about 10 years ago, was the old Strickland property there in Gold River. And I had that knocked down the hallway at the time, right?
yeah,
But that wasn't, nobody came and said it was unsafe, it was the visual part of driving
Yeah.
by, right?
yeah,
It looked like a wreck in the middle of the
yeah.
town, right? So,
We can be much more flexible with just unsightly than we can be with dangerous. Okay, does anybody have any further questions for Jamel? Anything you
I
want?
think I would like to declare conflict on the vote because we're related, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, well, we're not voting yet, but yeah, but you should declare a conflict. That's correct. Yes, and stay out of it altogether. Yeah. So Jamel, we're going to get a report, so you can sit in the seat and listen to it, and we'll,
okay.
These
we'll go
guys-
back to my seat or?
yeah, right up, right back there. You guys come up and share with us what your findings are and your recommendations.
If you don't mind, Alan, if we want to invite Jamel a little bit closer, because you said you haven't seen the property in a little bit.
Oh, you can come up. You
And
can
then
come
you
up
can
and
see
sit
the
here,
pictures
yeah.
on the screen.
I don't have to come up.
If you feel like you want to.
Yeah, then you'll see all the pictures right firsthand.
You're over there,
They're
that
gonna
TV
be on the
screen there.
TV.
So good morning. Thank you again for taking the time to meet with us today. As you can see in the report that was presented, and Jamel outlined our conversation, we had a complaint that the property was in a dangerous condition. Myself as the bylaw officer went out and investigated it on September 20th. And during the walkthrough of the property, it was determined that the property was in a dangerous condition. If we want to go down to the photos, I'm just gonna touch on the photos and go through the report. So the first photo we see here is from the trail. It is off the main road, so it is not visible from the main road. It's only visible from the rails to trails. So that is a plus that I personally didn't know was there until I received the phone call, I'll put it that way. So the next photo we see is from the back of the property looking down onto Highway 3. I understand, obviously, at the end of the day, if we can secure something, I'd be more than willing to do that, but this property, I just don't see how we can secure it. As you can see from the photo, the two gentlemen in the yellow vest, that wall is completely gone. It's roughly about a 20-foot section. The wall is completely missing. If you go to the next photo, you can see it from the other corner of the wall, it's just gone. So there's no way to secure that wall. And then our next photo below it would be the front of the house looking back towards Bridgeview Drive, if you know the area, which the corner of the foundation has collapsed. And it's roughly about a 5x5 section, just freelancing over here, nothing supporting it. If you go to the next two photos, this is where the wall is missing. You can walk right in and, well, you actually can't walk in because you're gonna walk into the basement. Where the floor has collapsed in the section that the wall has fallen down.
Yeah.
And the next photo on the next page. That's me looking down into the basement from where the wall has collapsed. The remainder photos are just photos of the where I did tape it off to secure, show that we did do our due diligence to this point of taping it off, showing it's dangerous, etc. Just back to the written report section of it. Like I said, I conducted a site visit. I did another site visit that afternoon to have our building official, Brent Haas, do his inspection report from the building aspect of it. Do you have that report? You didn't print that off? Oh, okay. But you got it there?
No.
Oh, no, sorry, but that's
Just confirmation.
so yeah, Brent done confirmation of the report and outlined that from his aspect, it was in a dangerous condition, but with no way to secure it. He did outline his report along with my report that there is a possibility of a well on it that I haven't had a chance to go out and find it yet. But it is part of my plan for the remainder of the week to go and just try to find to see what the condition of that well is. But for the aspects of the house, in my personal opinion, as bylaw officer and Brent and his report outlined, I just don't see of any way to secure it with that wall being missing.
Other than building an entire big wall around it.
Exactly.
It costs more money than it would to tear it down.
At the end of the day, like we mentioned, we're all about helping out as best as we can. I just don't know how we can secure it. Yes, and then the motion we prepared for the committee on the front, at the Building Code and Unsightly Premises Committee. We had to move the member Deputy Warden Shafford, second by Council Connors, at the Building Code and Unsightly Committee, recommend to council the property owners of 5870 Highway 3, Gold River, Bloomberg County, PID 601-58557 be issued in order to demolish one to elect or dangerous structure on the property within 14 days.
That notice been given yet?
No.
It has to be approved here first.
So, I was just gonna say, this is like, actually, when reading the report and then hearing your explanation, that just it, I understand a little bit better how severe it is. It would appear that obviously demolition is the only, and urgent demolition is the only answer. For Mr. Asa, like the cost borne by demolition, if it's borne by you or it's borne by, you know, somebody who were to purchase the property, the same cost will exist. So, you know, if you're able to sell it, the property, this order would follow it to the known anyway. So I would suggest, you know, if, you know, an extension really won't help anything because all we're doing is just pushing that demolition cost off on the new owner.
Well, he has the equipment to do it. The gentleman wants to buy it, he has excavators and trucks and stuff like that, right? So,
Well,
If you can make a deal with him to get it done in 14 days, and then you can take that off his purchase price, like, you know, like, that's kind of up to you, but I think all we can do is, to be truthful, all we can do is we'll give you the order to demolish. And if you do not do that and can't sort it out with him and yourself, then we'll have to do it, and then the cost will bear the cost, and it'll be added to taxes on the property, so. It's, you know, I mean, if you needed 3 weeks instead of 14 days, I think we could probably go
Yeah.
there, but that would be.
yeah, I'm reluctant to put this through winter.
Oh, I know, it needs to be done because the snow will not be. Yes, Derek,
I want to ask some questions on the dangerous aspect of it.
sure.
What's the legal access to this property? You know, how someone could get to it?
There's a, from Highway 3, there's a road going up to a property on Virtue Drive, and then you would access it off that, the
Is there
path.
right away up Bridge to drive to this property?
I wouldn't say Virtue Drive, it's more from Highway 3. When you go up just past the Wilson Trails, there's a beaten down path that looks like a car's been going in and out of there recently, just because it is beaten down from tire tracks. So it isn't like it's a dirt road off of the main road. It is like a little grassy area with tree brushes, but it has been accessed by a vehicle in most recent weeks.
So from what you can determine, there's legal access from Highway 3 to this property that is accessible by vehicle.
So we didn't do research on the property to determine where the official access is, that wasn't part of the research.
Oh, you didn't swap the obvious path.
But
Let's just erase it.
you have a.
Yeah, some of you know where the legal access route is.
yeah, coming off of number 3 highway, off number 3, you turn right off number 3.
Yeah.
And go up the driveway, but the driveway's grown up.
Okay.
You couldn't drive a truck up the driveway or a car up the driveway is grown in, right? The driveway, because it hasn't been used for years.
Put it on the trail.
Well, we're not getting into a discussion or debate by no means, but when I was there on the 20th, a vehicle has been up there recently.
Is that wrong?
Yeah.
I'll go check it out when I
Yeah.
go over. Because I don't know why anybody unless it's a gentleman who's interested in buying it went up. There's no other reason for anybody else to flip it. There's nothing there.
But you can see it from the trail, can you not?
You can see it from the trail, yeah.
Curiosity, though, some people may
Kids do
just
this. kind of
want to
stuff.
go there to look at it because it's there.
Yeah, Derek, were you
Elected.
finished or not?
No,
No.
there's one more question.
Yes.
On the well, you mentioned it briefly. Did Brett go back and look at the well?
No, that's left in my responsibility. I just haven't got into it yet.
Okay.
It's on my agenda for day or tomorrow. to
No, that's
complete.
fine. I'm looking at the dangerous aspect. I mean, I'm more concerned about the cover on the well with kids than the house itself, but
And sometimes when it comes to demolition, that if the well is it's not usable, then sometimes with the demolition that they'll actually fill the well in as well, if that's appropriate. So,
Yeah.
but we'll definitely look.
the ideal thing would be for the person maybe if you want to buy it, and it's going to tear it down eventually, to be the one that would demolish it. I mean, I don't know that we can orchestrate that. But as you suggested, in that first 14 days, that might be the solution if we decide to vote in favor
Yeah.
on demolition. We haven't voted yet.
Well, I mean, if Jamel can get it done himself, he can probably get it done cheaper than we can get it done.
Absolutely.
And maybe make a deal with the guy who he's trying to sell the house to, not to bill him and just sort it out as part of the purchase arrangement, but I don't see how we cannot make it safe. Yeah, it's 14, and
Yeah.
I'm speaking out of turn, but if 21 days makes it easier for you than 14 days, but at that point, if that be.
Yeah, what is our obligation? What is our timeline? Do we have in the legislation or the timelines?
No.
There's not, but once you determine it's dangerous, then obviously that has to
You're taking risks every day.
That has to, the bearing on the time you allow, you said 6 months, well, then obviously it can't be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, we usually, we try to be reasonable with people when it comes to that.
But when we look at the big picture of it, obviously that wall didn't fall down overnight. And the condition of the house didn't fall down, or they didn't come into
It's been
that condition
happening for
overnight.
years.
It's been like that for a few years, and knocking on wood, we had no incidents. Like we said, we're aware of it now, we've deemed it as the committee dangerous. Now that liability is also on us, and we have to make sure the property owner is liability is off himself, but also off us at the end of the day. So that's why we felt 14 was reasonable, and not the usual 7 that we do. But like we said, we're open to a reasonable amount.
I'm just trying to be reasonable and giving him enough time.
Exactly.
To try to sort it out. That's all.
I agree with, I think we should, I'd like to move that we issue demolition order, give them 30 days, given the availability of contractors.
Second that motion. Seconded, moved and seconded, discussion on the motion. All those in favor? Opposed, motion's carried. If 30 days sort of out.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good day.
Okay, people, we're having a 10-minute break.